Hello ladies and motherfuckers. My name is Solid Steak and welcome to the Solid Steak Show. On today's episode we take a look at Konami and Kojima Productions' Zone of the Enders HD Edition via 2012's Zone of the Enders HD Collection for the PlayStation 3. So let's get this shit started, shall we? One year ago, I released the very first episode of the Solid Steak Show on Zone of the Enders, the second runner. I would tell you to go watch it, but I read my lines with the enthusiasm of a dead squirrel, and it's just not very good. Just watch my last video on COD 4 instead, it's way better. What most of you probably don't know is that was actually supposed to be a review of the Zone of the Enders HD collection as a whole, a double feature including both games. But reviewing two games in one video proved to be far too great of an endeavor for my first project, and I settled on reviewing the game's sequel for, very obvious reasons. It's because it makes me harder than Jehudie's cockpit, if you know what I'm saying. Okay, hold on, we'll get to that later. Anyways, the point is that today's episode has been a long time coming. Speaking of cum, the robots have dicks in this game. Thanks, Greg, I was getting to that. Alright, I suppose let's get the most damning points out of the way first. Zone of the Enders might be one of the stupidest dumb games I've ever played, and I want to know what the development team was huffing when they made this because... well, fuck, get me some of that shit. As mentioned earlier, the mechs in this game have their cockpits placed in what we shall say is a, very phallic position. As much as I'd like to make a stupid joke about this, nothing I write could possibly be as funny as the actual story behind this. So join me for Story Time with Steak, where the only limit is your imagination, because I was too lazy to do any fancy editing. The story goes as such. One day, the designer behind the art for this game, Yoji Shinkawa, was asked, "Why did you put the cockpit there?" He responded with, "Because it's a cockpit." Oh, were you expecting more? No, the rationale behind that design choice really is that juvenile. Guys, can we have this Konami back? I liked Konami way better when they let people get away with this shit. Can we all agree on that? We all prefer the Robo-Dick Konami over the run-by-dicks Pachinko Machine Konami? Okay, good. Moving on, because I have a fucking list of questions that need answering. Why is the character you play as a little kid? Why is he the most obnoxious character to exist in anything ever? Why is he so good at piloting the super robot? And why the sweet Jesus fuck does he just fall into the mech? He's just running around, hiding from evil robots, crying like a little bitch because all his friends died. He goes to take shelter in this warehouse, but then he just falls in and it's all like, oh fuck, okay, we're doing this shit now. Okay, this thing is a literal super weapon, a cutting-edge orbital frame among the most advanced weaponry within the game's lore, and it's just sitting around, completely unguarded, ready for any random kid to just come in and take it. But wait, it gets worse because then the army people just let him use it. Yeah, they're all like, hey, you're pretty good with that. How about you just fly it over to us at the other side of the colony? And then Leo's like, nah, I don't wanna. Surely there's someone more qualified. Which, okay, that's a good point. Surely there must be. But then the army people are all like, well, nah, you'll be good, fam. You do it. It'll be fine. And then he does it, even though he didn't even want to do it. Fuck. Stupid game. The writing in this game is not very good. It's pretty awful, actually. The acting is pretty shit, too.
You're going to the church? That's impossible! It's suicide to even try!
But you could probably tell that already. At least after you sit through the opening cutscenes, you'll get your hands in control of Jehudie, a cutting-edge orbital frame, and wow, is she a joy to control. You have three main attacks, a basic combo, a dash attack, and a charge attack, with ranged and melee variants of each, technically making it 6 main attacks, I guess. They're all pulled off with different combinations of the square and R2 buttons, with your proximity to the enemy determining whether it will be a ranged or melee attack. I know that sounds kinda cumbersome, but trust me, it works fine like 95% of the time. It'll screw you up on dash attacks sometimes, but that's not really a big deal. You also have a grab move that's really finicky, so I didn't really use it a whole lot, and sub-weapons, most of which are pretty useless. The only one really worth a rat's ass is the gauntlet, so do yourself a favor and just avoid the others unless you're some kind of fucking masochist or something. Jehuti's other abilities include a boost dash for quick movement and dodging attacks, a block of that I only remembered I had until the very end of the game. By the way, thanks brain. You are welcome. I was being sarcastic. And flight. While being able to fly up and down and all over the place sounds pretty cool, the level design never really takes full advantage of it. Although it does make the fights look pretty cool, even if they're being broken up by these cutscenes constantly within the first hour. Yeah, the first hour or so gets bogged down by more long cutscenes than I really have the patience for. It's a Hideo Kojima game, you kind of expect cutscenes up the ass, but that doesn't make this shit any more bearable. Anyways, you sit through what feels like years of cutscenes. Very ugly cutscenes. Did I mention how goddamn hideous they look? Then fly around in this little overworld thing, we'll get to that later. Then you fight an actually pretty fun boss. After that, the game actually starts to pick up a little bit and starts to show you what it's really all about. Now, starting off with the positives. The core concept of an action game where you control an airborne mech is a very good one. Combat, as mentioned earlier, is a lot of fun, and it really plays and feels like nothing else on the market. Flying around is fast and smooth, and being able to maneuver up and down as well as left and right adds an extra level of tactical positioning and approach tactics that other action games simply don't have. The core mechanics here are so fun, unique, and refreshing that they remain engaging throughout the experience despite the lack of a real difficulty curve or any enemies that require you to mix up your tactics. Unfortunately, despite how original the game feels, you really just end up spamming your melee attack most of the time. Enemies will act a little more aggressively and block a little more towards the end of the game, but all that really requires you to do is just dodge more frequently and generally play a little more defensively. It's a shame because Zone of the Enders could have been way more than just a dumb button masher, but unfortunately combat takes very little brain power. Jeez, I said I was going to start with the positives, and I'm already tearing into this game like a roast chicken at a redneck Christmas dinner. Well, I mean, the soundtrack's pretty good at least. It consists of a lot of ambient yet energetic techno beats. It fits the tone and atmosphere of the game pretty well. No real complaints, it's catchy and cool. But now for the negatives. Unfortunately, Zone of the Enders' fun and interesting core concept can't save it from some huge design flaws, lackluster presentation, and bad performance issues. Although the performance issues are something specific to the HD version, so I won't rag on it too much, as if you go with the original PS2 version, you should be fine. As mentioned earlier, there's a real lack of progression or increase in difficulty throughout the game, which wouldn't be a big deal in something more narrative-driven like The Last of Us, but in an action game, the combat's kind of the fucking point. Presentation-wise, it's kind of a mixed bag. On one hand, you have things like the catchy soundtrack, cool robot design, and neat attention to detail like the accent lights on Jehuti changing color as you lose health, turning from blue to yellow and finally red, or Jehuti skating along the ground and leaving sparks as she does so. But conversely, there's the bad acting, bad writing, ugly FMV cutscenes, bland and uninspired environments, and why the fuck is everything so dark and dingy? You can have a nighttime setting and have a little bit of color, you know. Not everything has to be brown, black, gray, and puke green. Level design is equally as boring as the environments themselves, generally involving large open spaces and sometimes a tunnel. There's a canyon level towards the end of the game that's pretty fun, but that's about all I can really say about it. Now remember that little overworld I mentioned? Now if you're thinking to yourself, geez, that's weird, why does an action game need an overworld? Well, it's because this game makes you backtrack. What the fuck? These levels weren't fucking interesting the first goddamn time I went to them. Why in the dick would I ever want to go back? I mean, they couldn't even be fucked to give them good names. We got fucking Town 2 and Factory 1 over here, but by far the most damning flaw is the game's length, clocking it at a whopping 4 hours. 4 hours. 4 fucking hours? And half the game is fucking backtracking and cutscenes full of this nonsense.
Are you hurt anywhere?
No.
So, you didn't find anybody out there?
No.
Okay, whatever, it's fine. I don't care, that's not a ripoff at all. Now, I really want to talk about this game's ending, so spoiler warning. Not like you do or should care about this game's story, though. So after making your way across the space colony, you make it to the base that you were told to go to by the army people. But then this girl you fought at the beginning of the game is there to ambush you, and it's an excellent boss fight. Seriously, I wish the whole game was this much fun. It's challenging, fast-paced, you're constantly on your toes avoiding and counterattacking. It's actually the one point in the game where mixing up your attacks is advantageous. You end up beating her and you almost kill her, but you don't, cause you're a stupid whiny kid. Yes, that is a robot making a stabbing motion at another robot's dick. If that hasn't enriched your life, I don't know what will. Then you finally get to go meet the army people. That lady you didn't kill comes back and kills your friend. Should've stabbed that dick while you had the chance. Then you go off to disarm some bombs for some reason. I don't know, I really wasn't paying attention at this point. On the way, Leo bonds with Yehudi's AI. Sorry, I just threw up in my mouth a little bit there. You disarm the bombs, fight that lady again, and then Anubis shows up. Anubis is the most powerful orbital frame in the history of ever. Oh my god, he's so fucking cool. He teleports around. Oh, I wonder how I beat him. Oh, okay, we just leave. We just escape. Okay. Then Yehudi tells us that she's supposed to go to some super weapon and self-destruct, and roll credits. Yep, that's the kind of half-assed ending we get here. I'd actually feel kinda gypped, but the sequel does give us some closure and actually wraps up the story nicely, so whatever. As it stands, it's kind of amusing in its bluntness. With everything said and accounted for, I'll give Zone of the Enders HD Edition a rating of passable. There is fun to be had with Zone of the Enders. It'd be hard to make such a good concept completely terrible. The final product though is not one that ever fully delivers on the fast-paced mecha action it promises. The PS2 version might be neat for collectors looking for an action game that's a little different, but for most people I can easily recommend that you just skip this one and go straight to the sequel, The Second Runner. Just as long as it's not the Xbox 360 version. They never patched that version like they did for the PS3 version of the HD collection, so it's still gonna have performance issues. Now this is the part of video where you'd normally expect all the end cards to be, but I'm not going to include those. Instead, I'm going to give a big shout out to all the people who have been supporting me over this last year. I'll admit that channel growth certainly hasn't been as large as I was hoping for, but I ended up meeting people and getting opportunities that I wouldn't have otherwise. So thank you to all of you for watching the first season of the Solid Steak Show. My name is Solid Steak, and I hope to see you all again in Season 2. Fuck! I forgot to put a Cherry Dr. Pepper joke in this episode.